Not every king ruled with power. Some simply sat on the throne and watched time pass. Tonight, we drift through the silent lives of history's least active monarchs. Just calm reigns and quiet kingdoms. Hello friends, it's me. Welcome back to this channel, where I help you sleep faster and get better rest by reading you stories. Tonight we continue our series of royal mishaps, but we're changing things up a bit. Last week we looked at the most useless royal decrees ever made, those laws that probably never even saw the light of day, or had consequences so trivial they didn't even matter. Tonight we are going to look at the most useless monarchs, the ones whose influence was so small, whose decisions were so insignificant, their reigns could generously be described as uneventful. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I love a good scandal. A juicy court intrigue or a royal screw-up is my bread and butter. But tonight, we're taking a break from the chaos because sometimes it's nice to listen to a story without worrying about anyone stabbing anyone else in the back. Let's just dive right in. Imagine the flickering light of a candle flame dancing on the wall beside you. Your eyelids are growing heavy and your breathing is slowing down. Let's keep going. The year was 1347 and King Edward III of England had his hands full. The 100 Years' War was raging. Queen Philippa of Hugh was getting increasingly difficult to manage and the Black Death was sweeping across London. But luckily, Edward had plenty of capable royal relatives who could cover for him while he took a much-needed vacation. His son, the Prince of Wales, Edward the Black Prince, was away fighting the French. But he was old enough and sufficiently unloved by his father that Edward III didn't worry too much about leaving the kingdom in his hands. His brother, John of Eltham, Duke of Hereford, was perfectly suited to run the country. He was only 6 years old. The new king woke up early and went straight to the Privy Chamber. There he shaved, washed himself, and dressed in royal robes. Then he went to church. Afterward, he lunched with his mother and several members of the nobility. As usual, there was lots of wine and everyone got drunk. Edward then retired to his bedroom to watch the boys play chess. For the amusement of the court, Edward decided to throw a little gold at the players, which apparently wasn't enough because one of the boys ran off after being paid. This seemed like a bad omen and everyone began to grumble. John played a little more chess, but soon it was time for dinner. After consuming a vast quantity of food, Edward retired to his chambers once again. He played a bit of dice with John and gave him money to spend on sweets. He watched as John put on a play with the two young princes. And when he went to bed, he ordered that the children should stay up and eat what they wanted from the royal kitchen. On the way out, John picked up a chicken leg and walked happily toward the door. Suddenly, Edward, the new king, dropped dead. Little John hurried after him, shouting for the royal physician. But it was too late. The king was cold by the time the doctor arrived. A hasty council was called, and John became King John of England. As you can tell, he didn't do very much. This was by design. The entire point of this job was to hold the throne warm until the Prince of Wales returned from France. John was a mere figurehead and any work done by him would be undone as soon as Edward came back. It's not that John didn't want to rule. He just had no interest in doing anything. This pattern continued throughout John's reign. He liked hunting, eating, drinking, and playing with his toys. He kept regular hours, rising early, retiring late, and always enjoying a hearty meal between the two. His counselors did most of the work, and he signed most of the important documents without even reading them. By the time Edward returned from France, John had managed to lose half the English crown jewels. But other than that, everything was pretty much the same. Edward III reclaimed his throne and John slipped away to live a life of leisure and debauchery, eventually dying in 1399 under rather mysterious circumstances. Now, while it may seem odd to us today, this type of passive rule was fairly common in medieval Europe. After all, the king didn't need to get his hands dirty. That was what his advisors were for. All he had to do was show up, look important, and make sure everyone knew he was in charge. Take, for example, Charles the Simple, King of West Francia from 843 to 866. Charles was born mentally disabled and spent most of his reign locked in a tower. When he did come down, he would wander aimlessly around the palace grounds, muttering to himself and picking flowers. He was harmless, but he couldn't do anything. Then there was Louis the Sluggard, who reigned as King of France from 1314 to 1316. Louis was the epitome of the phrase "still waters run deep" because unlike most kings, he wasn't particularly bright. Despite being the smartest person in any room he entered, Louis never offered an opinion or made a suggestion. He just agreed with whatever his counselors told him to do. When Queen Isabella of Bavaria came to power in 1328, she was so overwhelmed by the responsibility that she spent most of her reign in bed. She only rose to sign important documents, and she had a special platform built to lift her up to the proper height of the royal desk. Even then, she preferred to delegate most of her duties to her counselors. And how could we forget Blanche of Bourbon, who was Queen of France from 1329 to 1337? Blanche was the original "I'm not a morning person." She slept in until noon every day and then spent her time playing games, gossiping, and drinking. While these women might have seemed like lazy or uncaring rulers, they were actually quite savvy. By staying out of sight, refusing to get involved in politics, they avoided the pitfalls that had tripped up so many of their predecessors. They didn't have to deal with angry nobles or jealous relatives or scheming courtiers. They could just relax and enjoy the ride. After all, what's the point of being queen if you can't relax? Once upon a time in the heart of China, there lived a man named Wang Mang. Now, Wang Mang wasn't your typical history maker. He didn't conquer empires or invent new technologies. In fact, he didn't really do much of anything. At least that's what the history books say. You see, Wang Mang was a simple man with simple needs and simple pleasures. He loved eating, sleeping, and collecting shiny rocks. He was so obsessed with shiny rocks, in fact, that he built a whole underground labyrinth beneath his house just to store them. His neighbors thought he was a bit odd, but they didn't mind because Wang Mang was a kind and generous man. He would often give away food and money to those in need, and he was always willing to lend a helping hand. One day, a group of bandits came to town and started robbing everyone's houses. They came to Wang Mang's house and demanded that he give them all of his food and money. But Wang Mang just smiled and led them to his shiny rock cave. The bandits were so amazed by all the beautiful rocks that they forgot all about robbing Wang Mang. They spent hours admiring his collection and even helped him organize his rocks. When they finally left, Wang Mang was so grateful that he threw a huge feast in their honor. From that day on, the bandits changed their ways and became some of Wang Mang's best friends. And so the people of the town lived happily ever after, thanks to the kindness of a simple man with a love of shiny rocks. As the oldest and longest reigning monarch in the history of England, King James VI, and I was a busy man. He published several books on a wide variety of subjects, including poetry, theology, and even a manual for the Scottish monarchy. He led his people through the turbulent years of the Reformation and the Anglo-Scottish War. He oversaw the legal codification of Scotland and the union of the Scottish and English crowns. And he narrowly escaped assassination attempts by both Catholics and Puritans. Throughout all of this, James found time to enjoy the simpler things in life, such as hunting, fishing, and riding his horse. He also had a particular fondness for sweet treats, especially tarts. James' favorite tart was a recipe he developed himself, and it consisted of a buttery crust, filled with chopped apples, cinnamon, sugar, and nutmeg. He would often indulge in several tarts a day, much to the chagrin of his doctors. Despite his unhealthy diet, James managed to live to the ripe old age of 59, and it's rumored that his love of tart was the secret to his longevity. Whether or not there is any truth to that rumor, one thing is certain. King James I and VI had a particular fondness for sweet treats, and he wasn't afraid to indulge in them.